Hi, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
How you doing? You got a banana there, I see, and it's a little on the ripe side, frankly. I definitely eat that fast.
They ripen fast these days with the
Yeah, they
internet and
do.
everything.
Yep. You're eating it, Mickey.
But it's delicious.
Yeah.
It's deeply symbolic, Bob.
I'm afraid to ask of what, but of what?
Okay. No. Well, this will be a clue.
Uh-huh.
Sort of. Who is this man?
You always do this to me. Beats
This
me,
is not
but if
Bradley. This
yeah.
is not Bradley Cooper playing Leonard Bernstein.
Okay, good. We've ruled that one out. Close call. I almost said that, but thank you. Thank you for eliminating that. I have no idea. He looks like someone who's long dead and could have used a little work. Yeah. Around the eyes, maybe. He could have used a little work.
It's Judge Julius Hoffman, Bob. Remember him?
Oh, in the like the 1970. Wait, is he the one who was killed at the Marin County Courthouse? No.
No.
That was a different judge. But this was the same era. This was like the hippie era. Judge Hoffman. No, the trials of he tried the Chicago 7? No,
Yes.
the Chicago. Yes, he tried the Chicago 7.
Veered intellectually into the truth.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
So,
thank you.
And my point is the Chicago 7, it started out as 8, then it went to 7, was a conspiracy trial on some flimsy charges. They were acquitted on on the conspiracy charges. There were a couple of other things they were convicted of. These were people who went to Chicago allegedly as part of a conspiracy to incite a riot. Jerry Rubin, Abby Hoffman, John Freund, a bunch of people.
Let's do a good song by Graham Nash, right? Graham Nash song. Do you want me to sing that now?
Sure.
No, that's more of a Parrot Room thing. We'll save that. But it was good.
No,
good
people
song.
love that. Anyway, so it was a disaster as a prosecution. And did it stop the anti-war movement? No, the anti-war movement got stronger. Okay.
I see where you're headed with this, Mickey.
So this week, I think we didn't discuss it last week, the Atlanta indictment of Trump dropped. And I think it's weaker than the Jack Smith indictment, which itself is pretty weak. And I think it will eventually prove to be a disaster that will only strengthen the Trump movement because it'll be a sort of slow motion train crash. Now it's and I can explain why. Okay.
Why don't you? Before you do, though, I would say there's one thing I like about it. As you know, I think these indictments are all a bad idea. Even leaving aside the question of whether he's guilty,
Bob,
he probably is.
Turn America into a banana republic.
Banana republic. Oh, it's all coming together. All the symbolism is hitting me at once, Mickey. It's overpowering. But let me just say, the one thing I like about the Georgia case is you got that classic snippet of Trump on tape saying to the Secretary of State of Georgia, I just need you to find me 11,000, however many hundred. He has the exact number. So, like, it's, I mean, there's kind of no doubt. He's not talking about real votes that are out there. He's just saying, this is the number. It'll give me that's the number I want. Okay?
Well, Alan Dershowitz could say.
And then Raffensperger says, to debunk one of Trump's claim of fraudulence, he says, oh, wait, I'll send you a link. It'll show you that this was legit. And Trump says, no, I don't want to see a link. I don't want to see a link.
Well,
great exchange.
The point is he's making a claim of fraud. And as you know, it's similar to a call, Al Gore might have made or somebody associated with Al Gore in 2000 saying, we're behind by 5,000 votes. We think there are 5,000 Gore votes out there, which there were actually. He was right. He would have been right. And we just need 5,000 of them. And that wouldn't have been, I don't think would have been a crime. Alan Dershowitz makes a very good point, which is which I'm reluctant to concede. But he says he was on the Gore team that fought the 2000 election. They did virtually a lot of the things that Trump did. They tried to talk people into opening up, new tranches of voters and disqualifying bad ones and counting some votes that were on the butterfly ballot for these people, for some other people, and they had fake electors. They had a panel. They had a slate of alternative electors, as does everybody apparently who challenges a presidential election because it worked once in 1960. So they're giving it a try. And they're worried that if they win the lawsuit, then there won't be any electors to stick in. So he had the fake electors. And so what is the difference between what Trump did and what, he and hypothetically Al Gore might have done in 2000? It's hard to point to anything. Anyway, let me talk about this indictment. Okay, this indictment is a RICO indictment. Okay,
right.
And I'm relying on Ken White Pope Hat's description.
And first of all, do we relish the irony of Giuliani being one of the people indicted on a RICO thing? That's great.
No,
we don't. Okay,
it's
sorry.
Cheap left-wing irony. We don't care.
Sorry,
about that. We only care about cheap right-wing irony.
Okay.
It's a RICO indictment, and for a RICO indictment, you have to have a conspiracy to do a bad thing. The bad thing seems to be to change the result of the presidential election in the wrong way. The very first sentence of the indictment is, Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. Okay, now already we're in sort of trouble because there are a lot of people who think Donald Trump didn't lose the 2020 election. And could you prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump did lose? I'm not so sure. You certainly
wait a second. Can I interject something? Can I interject something?
Evidence. Yes.
Can I interject something? The definition of the person who lost a given presidential in America is the person, whatever Congress says. If Congress certifies a given person the winner, that person won the election. So it actually is an historical fact. An historian would state without fear of contradiction that Joe Biden won the election because Congress certified it.
You could read it both ways. It's not clear that that's the sense she means. Because she's talking, remember, this is all before January 6th. This is all Trump trying to change the legitimate result. The legitimate result, under your definition, wasn't certified until later. This is when
are you one of the people who think he didn't win the election? That Biden
no, I think he won the election, but could I prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? I have a very high standard for what beyond a reasonable doubt is. Anyway, it's weird. It's a little weird that is the crime. Okay, that is the illegal goal that this conspiracy is going toward. Then there are two sorts of things that she cites in the 180 or so acts. One is overt acts, which can be completely legal, like sending a text to Brad Raffensperger saying we should talk about the election, or talking to Brad Raffensperger about the election, or getting John Eastman on the line. They're overt acts. You need an overt act for a conspiracy. It can be illegal. It could be a legal act. That's fine. But then it also has to be racketeering. So you also have to have some illegal acts. And as you know, I think that's a really good requirement. That I don't think you should punish Trump for just trying to reverse the results of an election unless you can show he did something illegal. Okay, let
me be clear. You're saying
threaten somebody physically or something.
You're saying in addition to her the prosecutor asserting that the end toward which the conspiracy was aimed is illegal. And in this case, I'd say it is fraudulently overturning an election. I mean, if the actual outcome of the election was A, and this person wants to install, someone other than the legitimate winner, I would say that's a bad act. But are you saying that question aside, there have to be acts committed, in the furtherance of that end that are in themselves illegal? Is that required?
In order to qualify for a RICO conspiracy prosecution, if I read Pope Hat correctly, that is right. Okay. In other words, you can say, I want to kill the king. Let's all get together and kill the king, and somebody goes out and buys a bag to carry the knife, to carry something evil to kill the king. That's the overt act. But you also need racketeering. This is a mob law, remember? So you gotta have some mob.
So a conspiracy to murder someone is not indictable so long as they didn't steal the gun they were planning to.
No, it's indictable, but it's not indictable under RICO. I guess that's the difference.
Okay, under RICO.
It could still be illegal if there was an overt act, but to qualify for RICO, which lets them bring in all these people and hold everybody responsible for the actions of everybody else, I think you need a racketeering thing. I think we've veered into the truth. So to qualify for RICO, she needs some sort of illegal racketeering type thing. And all she has to rest her hat on is 2 cases of perjury, okay? But they're really minor people, okay? It's not Trump committing perjury, and perjury under oath, okay? She has a lot of people lying, but lying is not a crime. Under oath, it's a crime. She has 2 people lying under oath she charges. One is the woman in Coffee County where the pro-Trump people managed to get a hold of the Dominion voting program. And supposedly she was on the board and let them do it. And she lied. She supposedly lied about how long she was there or what rooms she was in, and et cetera, et cetera. And there was some other guy who lied about, he said, oh, I didn't put Trump into contact with Eastman, and he did put Trump into contact with Eastman. So relatively trivial lies by trivial people. And she imputes that because of the RICO conspiracy law to everybody else in the conspiracy. So everybody is guilty of RICO because these 2 minor leaguers perjured themselves.
Who'd they lie to? Lying isn't illegal unless
like hearings.
At hearings under oath. Okay.
Where they were sworn under oath.
That's bad. That's bad.
And then she has some fraud charges, but all the fraud charges relate to the fake electors. So if and the fake electors, it's very questionable because they had a press conference. They said, we're only signing these things in the contingency in case we win the lawsuit that declares these results fraudulent. And here we are. Here we're establishing our alternative elector slate. There's nothing sort of nefarious about it, yet she's charging them with fraud. Okay, I just think that's a pretty slim reed to hang your hat on for a massive conspiracy charge against the ex-president. I'm sorry, that just seems weak. You
could be right.
And I think the judge is going to lop off, unless they get the judge is a newbie judge, I think, is going to lop off some of these minor characters who didn't do anything wrong. And she's saying, well, because this other minor character lied, you're going to go to jail. And the whole case may collapse. Okay. But the other problem is it's a state law case. Okay. That means Trump can't pardon himself because it's state law if he wins. But it's sort of onerous in that there are like 5 or 6 states that could bring the similar lawsuit. So you could tie up a opposition presidential candidate for years and basically knock him out of a race by lawsuits, by criminal prosecutions, all of which you would lose. And that's sort of unfair. That is very banana Republican. We charge you and we can't prove you're guilty, but we take up so much of your time and cost you so much of your money that you're not a candidate anymore. That's a bad thing to do in a democracy. Yeah, so that's my line on the Fannie Willis case.
My position, as you know, is I'm not a fan of the indictments just because of their kind of consequences for the future of the republic. Trump did something so egregiously wrong that I don't, he tried to subvert the Constitution. He tried to subvert the very republic. I don't really feel a need to split hairs over what laws he may or may not have broken. He's a completely bad person, he shouldn't be president. I'm sure somewhere in there's something he should be in jail for. I just don't favor indicting him. Among all these indictments, I have no doubt that there's a plausible one, but I don't think
I agree that he's a bad person who shouldn't be president, and he tried to subvert the election any way he could. But I think he tried to subvert the election in any way that would keep him out of jail.
I don't think he even thought about that. I don't think he even thought about that.
Oh no, because if you didn't care about that, you would threaten Raffensperger with more than I know there's fraud and we have to do the right thing here. You would say, I don't care if there's fraud, give me those votes. If you got any of these guys saying we know those votes went to Biden, I want to cancel them and give them to Trump
come on.
explicitly, then they would be guilty. But they were careful to toe the line, and it matters what you say in these cases.
Mickey, he was obviously trying to do he was trying to exert as much force as a practical matter.
As was legal. Yes, that's exactly what he was doing.
No, as was at his disposal. If he had thought it would have helped to say, I'm going to have somebody break your arm, he would have said it. And in fact, we have good reason to believe that he had somebody call Stormy Daniels and threaten her child, okay? But he would have done it. But he knows damn well you can't do that to the Secretary of State of Georgia. He may be recording the call, for example.
They talked to hundreds of people, and
give me a
very
break.
few.
That's silly.
Very few charges. There's one poll worker who supposedly was threatened by somebody.
I'm not saying that's not an issue. That's not an issue. I'm saying this one thing. He used every bit of force that, as a practical matter, he thought was at his disposal in that conversation. He couldn't threaten physical force. He couldn't do all kinds of things because he's not talking to Joe Schmo here. He's talking to a guy who knows what the score is. And so he did what he could. He made, he was as thuggish as he could get away with. Okay.
I think he did.
And we know this guy will break the law.
Away with,
He's broken tons of laws.
Getting away with legally. And remember, Giuliani was on that conversation, and Giuliani knows what the law is, and he was very careful not to try not to break the law. Okay.
Well, Giuliani may have been. Look, Trump has broken law.
He was on the conversation.
Mickey, he's broken tax laws.
I'm not saying Trump hasn't broken the law. I'm not saying Trump is a good guy.
What are you saying? What are you saying?
In this, he did not. He set out to subvert the Constitution as much as he could get away with legally. And the question is, did he go over the line? And we lawyers like to split hairs, and it matters where the line is and did he go over it. I think there's some cases where he may have gone over the line, but this is not one of them.
That's a great argument for you to have. It's not what I'm talking about. You're saying that in this, you're saying that where he drew the line in trying to subvert the republic was he wouldn't break the law. And I'm saying no. Where he drew the line was in not wanting to be caught breaking the law. If he had thought that Brath Raz and whatever his name is wasn't recording, that he was sure he wasn't recording the call, he thought he was the kind of guy who would have folded, he would have done what he apparently did with Stormy Daniels, which is make physical threats. He totally would have. This guy's completely amoral.
People who obey the law because they are law-abiding, and people who obey the law because they don't want to be caught breaking the law, that's the same behavior. It's the same line. We have no way of distinguishing the two cases. I don't see why this argument is important. I mean, the question is, does this prosecutor in Atlanta have the goods on Trump? And I don't think she does.
Again, that's not what I'm arguing. That's not what I'm arguing. I'm not arguing about that.
Okay, well, that's what I was arguing. Jack Smith, when I was thinking about Jack Smith, okay, I think he has a stronger case because, first, his case is narrowly focused. It's not a broad conspiracy. I don't know if that's good or bad, but he only has 4 counts and he's only directed at Trump. If he could show that, here's a classic example of the difference between the two prosecutions. Jack Smith goes out of his way to say that these fake electors did nothing wrong. They were told that they were only contingent electors if they won the lawsuit. But the problem was that Trump took these lists and turned them into something else, in some sort of alchemy, and gave them to Pence and said, these are the real electors, okay? Willis in Atlanta indicts all those people and is going to throw them in jail, the people that Jack Smith went out of his way to say were innocent, okay? That's the difference between these two prosecutions. If Smith could show that somehow Trump, presented these electors as the real electors in some sort of way that creates a clear line he shouldn't have crossed, that'd be okay. If Trump had said, I know these are fake electors, you have to give it to these. I know these electors are, should go to Biden, but give them to me, that would be illegal. If you have the timing of his call right, and he said, Mike Pence is a bad guy because he intended them to go kill Mike Pence to obstruct this proceeding, that would be probably, I could see that was over the line, okay? So he's going to have a trial. We're going to see. What I've seen of the timing of that call, it's very ambiguous whether it was before or after he knew that people were in the building.
You mean the tweet or the call? The
tweet, sorry. The tweet.
Well, I don't think it matters whether they wanted to get Mike. I don't think it matters whether they wanted to get Mike Pence killed. I think it matters whether they wanted to create enough ruckus to obstruct the congressional proceeding. And in that sense, it doesn't really matter as much whether they were in the building or trying to break into it. If he wanted to rile them up and he thought there was a proceeding going on in the building that he wanted to impede, then, it seems to me he got a pretty strong case.
But that's just harder. That's just a harder case to make than if they're running down the hall and he says, "Go to Mike Pence's office. He's a bad guy."
Yeah,
Okay,
well, he knew.
yeah. So
I think he knew that.
it's just a harder case
he was
to make.
watching cable TV, which was showing them in the building, as I recall. But anyway, we've argued about that. Look, I mean, as for this indictment, I don't know, beats me. I yield to you on all legal issues related to it. I didn't bother to even read the stories. We got so many indictments floating around. It's like at this point, I don't think it matters politically much if you throw another indictment on, and legally, who knows?
It sort of becomes overkill, and it certainly helped Trump, in the primary. And the new Trump angle, which is innovative, is you have to vote for Trump because it's the only way to keep this wonderful man out of jail. Okay, that's an explicit a pitch that's being made to Trump's base is vote for Trump not because you want it to be president, because otherwise Biden's going to throw him in jail. Okay, and if he's president, they can't do that somehow because he'll put off the trial or call off the trial or pardon himself or do something. That's a negative effect of this plethora of cases against him. It would be much better if they narrowed it to one and did it before the election. I agree.
It's a mess.
But it'd be better it'd be better if they didn't do any of them and just focused on what a bad guy Trump is.
So is there a Republican debate this week?
Republican debate next week on the 23rd. I believe that's Wednesday, maybe.
That's a mere 5 days away. So that's this coming week. So Trump, we think, is not going to show up. Well, we don't know for sure.
This morning, Maggie Haberman reported that Trump has decided not to show up, but nobody thought he was really going to show up anyway. He has an interview with Tucker Carlson to compete with the debate on the theory that this will Bigfoot the debate and nobody will watch the debate. Everybody wants to watch him and Tucker Carlson. I'm not so sure about that. But anyway, the other big news, the other news that happened is, first DeSantis hired the most famous Democratic debate coach to prep him. Second,
who is that?
I think his name is O'Donnell. I don't know. It's a political article about him. The second thing is, he has this super PAC. Okay, he has stupidly put all his money in this super PAC that's controlled by this guy who is the former Cruz advisor. You know how that turned out. And so this Cruz guy is spending all his money and he doesn't really control it. And they can't coordinate, okay, in private, okay? So, Jeff Rowe could give a big speech saying, Jeff Rowe, the super PAC guy, saying, this is what DeSantis should do in the debate. And DeSantis could listen to the speech and take orders from Jeff Rowe if he wanted. But then that would tip off all the other campaigns to what DeSantis was going to do. So they try to do it secretly by posting it in tiny fine print on the back pages of their websites.
Oh, I wondered.
And so Rowe did this, and somebody found it. Okay, not that hard to find. His enemy, the opponents, found it. So now everybody knows what the instructions were, and the instructions were pretty hack. Okay, the instructions were
look at the camera.
No, it was restate your positive visions at least 3 times. Okay, when Christie attacks Trump, defend Trump. Hammer Vivek Ramaswamy, who's rising in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Take a sledgehammer to him, and it suggested calling him Vivek the Fake or Fake Vivek. There's a creative epithet.
That doesn't quite rhyme.
Yeah.
Trump would do better.
Yeah. I think he should say you should perform a Vivek section on him. How about that?
That would be good. Or just do
the debate would be called
go street brawler on him and say, I'm going to Vivo section your ass. Just say that on TV. That's
Vivek section.
Anyway, section your ass, yes.
He also went on Ann Coulter's show and did an interview with her.
Who did?
And of course,
who did?
DeSantis.
Okay.
It's only audio, unfortunately, but it's on her website. And her point is she should not take any of these idiots' advice and just focus on crime, immigration, and his success at COVID. And I think that's better advice. I mean, he's good. He's appealing when he talks about policy, like the policy nerd that he is. He's not appealing, sort of in other contexts when he's doing all these pollster things that are, that his handlers recommend that are seemingly sort of insincere. A good example is on immigration. Okay, he has a very strong position on immigration. He's for remain in Mexico, building the wall, e-verify, all the tough things he's for. But then he has to add, and we're going to declare war on the cartels, and if they keep bringing fentanyl into America, we're going to lay them out. Okay, and that's sort of something that you would
a little Duterte-ish, if you ask me, right? Does he mean by lay them out? He mean didn't DeSantis get into it? Is that the case where it sounds like he just wants to gun them down without trial or even apprehension?
Well, this was a reprise of that. This was him adding it because he obviously thinks that's what will appeal to people. Somebody has told him that's what will appeal to people.
Duterte did very well.
Not the things that will actually close down the border, but starting a war with Mexico.
Yeah.
I just think that's idiotic. He should, he should be a nerd. He should do actually say the right thing.
I have two questions about him, and you're in position to answer both. One is, does he sleep in that blue vest? All of a sudden, I don't see a picture of him without that blue vest on. Okay, that's the first question. The second question is, don't you think you should give up on him? You've been talking about him every week for the last decade or so. He does only worse and worse. I just looked at a poll where like Chris Christie's at 9%, Vivek is at 9%, and DeSantis is in that neighborhood. I mean, Mickey, give up.
He has been doing well in the polls, but
except for that, he's got a great shot.
Dan Balls wrote a very good article, and he's the dean of the Washington Press Corps. Bob wrote a very good article in the Post basically saying, the people in Iowa are for Trump, but they actually really like DeSantis, and he's head and shoulders in terms of his performance above the rest of the pack. So, yes, we shouldn't write him off and we should take him seriously. He's been a successful governor of one of the largest states in the union in time of crisis. He got votes from all over the place. So of course you should take him seriously.
Mickey,
he got votes from Democrats and a lot of votes from Republicans.
The theoretical argument for DeSantis is just of increasingly little interest to me as it becomes clearer that it's not working. It's not working. You can say whatever you want about him. It's like they're not into you, Ron.
At this point, you would say Gary Hart wasn't working either. I mean, it all depends what happens after the.
Oh yeah, but then we have the Hart presidency, right? I mean, what are you talking about?
Well, we almost just because he didn't know what that Wendy's hamburger commercial was.
I think
we almost had the Hart presidency.
Wasn't it Donna Rice that did him in?
No, that was the next time he ran. In 84 he swept New Hampshire in a landslide upset.
Okay.
The wildfire spread to a whole bunch of other states, and Mondale only stopped him later by saying, "Where's the beef?" And in a debate, and that sort of was the key line.
Commercial
turned it around to a Wendy's commercial.
Right.
Yeah. So and then he started fumbling, and he wound up losing.
Here's a question: how much note should we take of the fact that Christie did do well in this poll? Because here's the thing about Christie. On the one hand, he is the Antichrist. He's a total thug. That Fort Lee thing, I think, speaks directly to his actual nature, A. B, I was reminded the other day when he did a foreign policy riff, he is a hardcore neocon. He's like the most dangerous guy foreign policy-wise, probably running on either ticket. There's just not a war he wouldn't get us into. But all that said, whenever I see him, I think, why doesn't he do better? He comes off as authentic. He's clever. He's smart. He's got that regular guy thing down. You really are convinced he's leveling with you. None of that phony politician bullshit. This is the real thing. So why hasn't he done better? And B, is he now actually finally catching fire?
Well, the real thing is that a beast egomaniac. Remember his. I've talked about this. His big speech at the convention, which was supposed to introduce Romney. His keynote was all about Chris Christie and his mother and his boyhood. You barely know. You thought Chris Christie was running for president, so it was idiotic. And that will come out eventually. He's good when he's attacking Trump. There is a possibility that he becomes the vehicle for anti-Trump votes. I mean, somebody is going to become that vehicle. I thought it was DeSantis. It could be, but it could be Christie in New Hampshire.
Could be.
He's not doing well in Iowa, and
he's a little too Jersey for that.
Thinking. Sorry,
he's a little too Jersey for Iowa, I think.
Everybody's too Jersey.
You give that guy a corn dog, and it's like, get serious, man.
No, he can eat a corn dog. He'll eat anything.
Met one on the street. What?
He'll eat a corn dog and he'll eat your hand. He'll eat anything. Have you seen the guy? He's had that stomach surgery. Okay.
Yeah.
Didn't work. Okay. He's transcended the stomach surgery. Anyway, traditionally, if you do badly in Iowa, then that sort of drags you down in New Hampshire a couple of weeks later.
Yeah.
But I don't think that necessarily applies anymore. Hey, he could do well. I agree. I don't want him to be president because, he's made some crucial bad decisions and he's an infantile egomaniac.
Okay.
I mean, the crucial bad decision he made was voting for immigration amnesty through his cat's paw senator in the Bush administration.
Okay, but enough about who was a threat to Trump. Let's talk about who was a threat to Biden. How do we get Biden off of this ticket? Here's my latest. This is just strictly like game theoretical. Okay. Now, first of all, as we said last week, we got this Dean Phillips guy this representative, Democratic representative from Minnesota, who's saying, well, I'm not going to run myself, but I could run and somebody should run. He is supposedly trying to talk like Gretchen Whitmer into running or something. But anyway, here's my thinking. Like, no Democrat with a chance to win wants to be the one who stood up and said, stands up and says, I'm challenging Biden, right? Nobody wants to do that.
Right.
So here's what you do. You have a secret agreement. It's almost like a conspiracy, except it's legal. You get three people, kind of prominent, Gretchen Whitmer and a couple of others. And here's what they secretly agree to. Okay. This is beautiful. So first of all, they emerge gradually. Okay. So they create talk. Like somebody asked them, like, would you run? And they said, oh, look, it's Biden's thing. And they said, well, what if other people got in the race? Would you run? And they said, well, that's a hypothetical, but who knows? I mean, if it became an open race, who knows? So these three people are just more and more talking like they may run. And then one of them finally says, I may launch an exploratory committee. The point is, this all happened so gradually that it's not even clear which one of them did take the plunge, A, and B, they agree. This is the other part of the non-conspiracy conspiracy. They agree that at point X in the primaries, whichever one of them has more votes than the other two is the one they all get behind. The other two drop out. They endorse that one. Boom, no more Biden. What do you think?
Biden, I think you can't sneak up on Biden with three prominent Democrats. I think he'll be, he's on guard against that. Look at what he did.
What's he going to do?
He's going to have every other Democrat in the country call them and say, you're through in national politics if you don't shut up about this.
How's he going to
Look at what he did to the Kennedys. The Kennedys are an independent dynasty. He got every fucking Kennedy except Bobby Jr. to denounce Bobby Jr. I mean,
well, that's
impressive.
That's not a very big ask. I mean, Bobby Jr.'s,
there were a lot of Kennedys.
I didn't even know he did that, but that's because there may have
been some who didn't do.
That's because they're thinking he's going to be the president again, or may well be. But the less it looks like that,
well, everybody's thinking. If I had a bet right now, who is our next president? I would say it would be Biden.
But if you're one of these three people engaged in this conspiracy, the odds aren't that high because you're part of the conspiracy. This has got to happen, Mickey. We got to get rid of this guy.
The only way it works is if you get the top 20 people to condemn him, then his party is revolted against him and he couldn't withstand it.
Almost everyone wants this to happen. Most Democratic voters say they do not want him to be the candidate, and he's the incumbent. He's their incumbent. They don't want him. Most politicians don't want him. It's just that everybody's afraid to say it. The guy is a disaster. He's not fit to be president for another 5 years. He's not.
Well, he's not going to make it another 5 years.
That's my point.
I think he's fit now, and I think there are Democrats who worry, who do we got who can beat Trump? I think you're right. I agree with you.
Almost anybody has a better chance
It's very,
than him.
very weak.
You can name
I'm not
20
so sure.
Democrats, literally name 20 Democrats who clearly have a better chance than him. And I'm going to repeat one more time. There's two things that could come back to that two places where his stock could get lower. One is your fave, the Hunter scandal, and the other is the war in Ukraine. Speaking of which, Mickey,
the border. Wait, well, before we go to the segue, the border is heating up again. So we have Eric Adams.
Okay, make it three. Fine.
Housing migrants in Central Park and every New York landmark that's empty, and luxury hotels closing down. So Eric Adams can send immigrants to live in them. That's Media Central New York, and that's heating up, and that's three.
I mean, plus there are these global economy warning signs. People are worried about the Chinese economy having its Lehman Brothers moment. The Russian ruble is suddenly dropping. I mean, and of course, people assume like that's a great thing, but all these things have unclear consequences in a global economy. The point is that there's a number of things that are much more likely to get worse for him than better. Hunter scandal can only get worse. I think at this point, Ukraine much more likely to get worse.
If the economy goes south, it's not. I don't see how. I mean, Gavin Newsom might have trouble saying, "Oh, that was just Joe Biden's economy. My economy is going to be much better."
Right.
I think it's probably going to be the Democrats' economy.
But
anyway, go ahead.
The incumbent is tied more directly to all this stuff, I think. Now, and one consequence of the Ukrainian offensive now more or less officially having failed. I mean, even the U.S. government is kind of leaking its assessment.
I'd say
failed.
Yeah. I haven't given up on DeSantis, and I haven't given up on the Ukrainian offensive.
Well, I would say they have about the same likelihood of. So anyway, and one consequence of that, remember, the hope had been, as a political matter, Ukraine makes great gains in this offensive, and then they're in a strong bargaining position. You get a ceasefire. There's not a war going on when the election happens. That had been one plausible plan. Now, the offensive has apparently failed. And of course, you could, in theory, still strong arm Ukraine into accepting a ceasefire. But A, it wouldn't look quite as good. But B, apparently it's not going to happen. I mean, everyone's talking like, wait, where's this line from the Wall Street Journal? Quote, military strategists and policymakers across the West are already starting to think about next year's spring offensive. Oh, good. More lower and middle income Ukrainian males who lose either their lives or their limbs. I mean, that's all that's going on here. It's conceivable Russia could fold, but remember, if they both do another mobilization, Ukraine is already running out of people. Russia nowhere near it, and Russia's Russia is on a wartime footing. There was a story this week about how they're starting to crank out the drones. And Ukraine has been taking big losses just this week. What's happening in the battlefield now is they are apparently making this, well, I think final effort to break through something that can be called a serious defensive line, which they haven't done yet. It's in the Robotyne area. But they, either Russia has gotten a lot better at circulating wartime videos than Ukraine, and that certainly isn't the way it used to be, or Ukraine's losing a lot more armor. And there was along another front, there was this medium-sized village, Staromayorsk or something. And according to the Bild, this German periodical, Ukraine took it finally, but they lost 31 armored vehicles, including 23 armored personnel carriers that came from NATO countries. I mean, you just can't be taking these kinds of losses on a per village basis and get very much further than you already are. So,
but we're sending them F-16s, Bob.
Well, that is definitely the new meme, right? From the Blob is what happened is we failed to give them the weapons they needed. Well, we gave them a lot of weapons, and you can always, of course, more is always better, but And yes, some of these are qualitatively different kind of weapons, but remember, this was not even close. I mean, if you everyone expected better. Some people are trying to act as if, well, they sounded the cautionary notes. Michael Kaufman's doing a little of that. The fact is, Michael Kaufman said, I'm cautiously optimistic as the offensive approach. He said, I'm getting more optimistic. He said, I think they'll definitely break through one of the main defensive lines. And the question is whether they get through the next one. What has happened is way worse than almost anybody thought.
But isn't anybody arguing that the F-16s will now turn the tide a bit?
Oh, sure. And in
other words, it's not over.
And
they're going to have F-16s now, and they'll use the F-16s, and something good will happen.
And the ATACMs, which, extend the range of long-range missiles by 30 miles or something, and so on.
There's actually a weapon called the ATACM?
Well, the acronym, as it happens, is like ATACM or something. But the, look, in principle, but I got to say, one thing that I think, if you want to blame the U.S., really, for something, when you think about it, one edge Ukraine should have had going into this, given the fact that we are like the world's tech leader, they should have had better drones. There should have been this kind of magic drone or something, right? I mean, like, remember the Switchblade drones? Like, if they performed as advertised, I think they would be very effective. Apparently, I don't know. I don't think they're making them anymore. But the point is, you would really expect that we would have had that nailed. And I suspect, if you ask, why didn't we have something that was qualitatively better than what they had and something that you can mass produce pretty readily, I think I suspect that the way the military industrial complex works is, the way they get the big bucks is they sell the Pentagon on these huge weapon systems, right? They want to sell them the next fighter plane. They want to sell them the next this, the next that. And something relatively simple, like, a really cheap but effective drone is just not the kind of thing we're good at. And now Russia's got these Lancettes that are apparently really good and some other drones. So.
I don't understand it. I don't understand why Ukraine didn't send swarms and swarms of hundreds of drones attacking the Kremlin.
Well, I mean, you got to get them through Russian airspace. It's a long way.
But they sent one or two, and half of them get shot down. And
I mean, they're doing what you remember.
It has to be that they don't want to be too effective, because then the problem with this war is you don't want to win too big, because then Putin goes nuclear. So
my alarm just went off. I don't think that's a big fear on the Ukrainians' mind. I think they're all for escalation, because that brings NATO in.
The big fear on, will we give them hundreds of drones?
Well, you got to remember, once they hit the Crimea, I mean, it's a long way to Moscow, first of all. Drones aren't like supersonic, they're just kind of buzzing along in a lazy way. And Russia's got all these air defenses. And once they got hit once, they beefed up the air defenses. But they're doing what they can do. And let's see, is there any good news? Oh, you want good news? Here, I'll play you. This is, now that was the alarm, so we got to go quickly. But I'll play you. This comes from Tommy Vitor. He does this podcast with Ben Rhodes, formerly the Obama administration.
He's a member of the blob, right?
Well, they think they're not, because Ben Rhodes coined the term the blob. And I think people think they're not. But the short answer to your question is yes. And I'm going to give you an example of why, Mickey. So this is Tommy Vitor on their podcast.
A hodgepodge of updates of Russia and Ukraine. So military experts now believe that Ukrainian troops involved in the counteroffensive are making what they're describing as tactically significant progress. That translates to about like 10 or 12 miles of territorial gains, but ones that are forcing the Russians to redeploy from other places.
So you know who those military experts are who said there are, quote, tactically significant gains? I bet you can guess. Think about it.
For the Study of War?
You got it.
Prestigious Institute for the Study of War?
The prestigious neocon propaganda front. Now, you'd think, if you're actually not a member of the blob,
people with the last name of Kagan.
You'd know a neocon propaganda front when you saw one. But the funny thing is, the Institute for the Study of War, neocon through and through, funded by the arms industry, which has managed to make itself what all of the mainstream media in the U.S. considers an indispensable source of information. They did an amazing job of getting this meme out there. I mean, The Associated Press did a story whose lead was like tactically significant games, blah, blah, blah. And
what's the point if it's obvious bullshit? And now everybody's
that's what I'm saying.
realizing it's bullshit.
That's what I'm saying.
Didn't happen.
Why do people continue to take this serious? Like Tommy Vitor, I don't even know if he knows when he quoted that 10 to 12 miles number. I don't know if he realizes that's for the whole offensive. That's not a news flash. That's like the last week was like 500 yards. Okay. And
how does this hurt Biden?
I didn't say it hurts Biden.
Your whole segue
speaking of the
your whole
blob.
segue was that this is one of the things that could, along with the economy crashing and Hunter Biden, could really damage Biden's chances.
Oh yeah,
was Ukraine?
No, the point is to get back.
I don't think Americans care about Ukraine winning. They don't care about Ukraine losing.
The point of that, the point of what I just said, was that even the people who think they're not part of the blob apparently don't even understand what the Institute for the Study of War is, which is mind-blowing. But the Biden point,
going back to your original
Biden point is there had been hope. You do this offensive, it works pretty well. You get peace with Russia. You get at least a ceasefire that lasts a year. That was the plan. And now that it's failed, Biden in principle could still pursue a ceasefire. But given the vibes coming out of D.C., no. Now the official line is our failure was to give them enough weapons. We're going to give them more weapons. And then there will be a spring offensive. Now, it's possible, again, there could be some miracle weapon that shows up or something. It could be that, lots of things could happen. The regime could implode, the lines could break, lots of things could happen. But it seems to me the most likely thing is that a year from now, this is going to be a bigger mess than ever. There's going to be little, if any, gains to show in the way of Ukraine, a lot more dead Ukrainians, and a lot more American money having been spent. And I'm just saying all that makes Biden more vulnerable, not less. And 3 months ago, they were hoping for a different scenario. A successful offensive might have had different political consequences.
Right. But I just don't think the political consequences. I agree that if he could say, I brought peace to Ukraine on honorable terms, that would be a big plus. But absent that, I just don't think what's going to happen is going to be a huge negative. Here's what I think might happen, which is he's going for this big new tranche of money for Ukraine. He's holding all sorts of other stuff hostage in it, like border money and things like that, and disaster money. So he'll get, but the tide is shifting against spending more in Ukraine pretty quickly. People are getting sick of it, so he gets less than he wants. He sends, 15 billion to Ukraine. They don't make any breakthroughs, but so the war just settles into a stalemate. You can have a stalemate where very few people are killed if neither side attacks, if they just both sit there.
If they both accept that it's a stalemate, like during parts of World War I, that can happen.
Yeah, that would be my guess. So that's not that damaging. We just forget it. They're in a stalemate. Forget those guys.
Well, yeah, I just think Biden was hoping for what
think
would
about
have been
electric vehicles and all the wonderful things Biden is bringing to us.
There is that, there is that. So anyway, that was the alarm, which means we got to head to the Parrot Room.
Okay. Okay. Well,
so I'm going to talk about in the Parrot Room these war games about war with China over Taiwan. They were actually conducted a few months ago, but I'm going to talk about them now.
Do we lose as we usually do?
It's complicated.
No spoilers.
I would say on balance, it's alarming. The story is, supposedly, the ones they do that the Pentagon does are confidential, but there was a quote from some guy some time ago who was privy to them, who said something like, no matter how many times we do this, we keep getting our asses handed to us.
There is the point that I think Jim Fallows made, or somebody. If you're China, and you have this big army you've built up, but they're untested in battle, you don't have the first test in battle be the invasion of Taiwan, because they're going to be inevitable fuck-ups. If they fuck up in the invasion of Taiwan, you have lost your main objective. You want to start a bunch of small wars with neighboring countries where you figure out what works and what doesn't, then you invade Taiwan.
Unfortunately, most of the neighboring countries are some of them are actual former formal allies of the U.S. But on the other hand, the U.S. Hasn't fought a war like this would be in quite some time either. So anyway, Sam Bankman-Fried back in jail. I don't know, did that happen a week ago or whatever? But we haven't talked about it. He's back in jail.
Right.
Your claim that $20 million of Ukrainian money was funneled to Hunter's family has come under question. May have been only 7 million. So hey, what's the big deal? It's just 7 million.
7 million, yeah.
720.
No, I agree. We don't. Anyway, we'll talk about that. There's a whole bunch of Hunter stuff that happened. Nothing earth shaking, but there are like 4 or 5 little things that happened, including Joe Biden's use of a pseudonym to communicate with him, and not even a creative pseudonym like Electo.
Or Big Guy. Wasn't Big Guy, was it?
I think it was Robert Peters. Robert Big Guy Peters. That was his Twitter handle. There's the Jew face scandal involving the biopic of Leonard Bernstein. Always fun.
That's JEW?
I made a reference to that in the opening, but you obviously didn't get it.
I totally didn't.
I said that Judge Hoffman did not look like Bradley Cooper in this Leonard Bernstein bio.
This week has been tough for me. I've been kind of out of it. Normally, as you know, I'm completely on top of all developments,
it's been tough for me
cultural and
too.
political.
There's the new populist anthem that's sweeping America. There's
try that in a small town? No. It's newer than that?
No, it's newer than that. There's if you're really good, Bob, the parrot may try to sing it. There's a guy named Brady Westwater who's a colorful LA character who passed away. I have a few things to say about him. There's we had talked briefly about EVs. There's a very depressing pieces about what the future progress of EVs is going to be like. And there's a whole bunch of other things. Bad news for Romney, bad news for Cruz. Should we have voted for Perot? San Diego has an interesting and apparently successful anti-homeless policy, backed by what former UCLA and NBA star? I'll let you guess that.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar?
No. But you only got 2 more choices and you'll get it.
Wait, UCLA and shit.
Oh, well, let's get that in the Parrot Room, Bob. News about Twitter and Threads. Great
Bill
anecdote
Walton?
from Marty Parrott's book.
Bill Walton?
Yes.
And you choosing to go. Well, I'll say this for the Parrot Room. Your partying plans are really subject to scrutiny, I think. Let me just say that.
Leon Wieselter apparently there's a phrase in Yiddish, he dances at all the weddings.
And that's
for
you.
Like a guy who just goes to every party. That's me.
That's you. Well, let me just tell you what my principle is, Mickey. I would never go to a book party for someone who didn't mention me in the book. Okay?
You do mention you. There are 2 nice sentences about you in the book.
In whose book?
That's 2 more than are about me.
In Marty's book?
Yes.
Oh shit, I'm there. Fuck, I already RSVP'd. No, I'm there.
I've now
everything.
read it.
I'm flying in from an exotic island.
It's a lot of fun. You should read it.
I thought you told me I wasn't in it.
You're not in the index. You're in the book.
They
the index
put me
is wrong.
In the index? Those fuckers.
No, but and now you're not going. Okay. There's a great anecdote in it, which I will spoil for everybody by telling it in the Parrot Room.
I gotta find a way to get to this party.
Do we have anything to say about the election result in Argentina?
You may.
It's not the final result yet. But I don't think I have nothing to say.
One more thing. I'm going to talk about AI, including an important piece about AI in foreign affairs by Ian Brimmer and Mustafa Suleyman. Do you know who Mustafa Suleyman is? If you're so conversant in everything, Mickey? No, you don't.
No,
you don't.
In fact, I didn't even I was so busy preparing the parrot, I didn't even hear what your entire last paragraph was.
Anyway, he's.
Well, we're going to get in the Parrot Room.
You'll hear it. Okay. So,
who is Mustafa Suleyman? Now I'm eager.
He was a co-founder of DeepMind, which is now Google's big. Google bought it. Now it's where Google's AI action is, and he's now CEO of this Inflection, which is one of the biggest AI startups. But anyway, the piece in Foreign Affairs is what I want to mention, which I also write about in today's Nonzero newsletter, which people can.
And your next book is going to be about that, right?
AI. It's not impossible. That's a fluid situation. Very fluid.
Okay. I was on tenterhooks. Okay.
All righty. So we'll see. Patreon, parrotroom.com/Patreon is where you'll hear all of this and more.
I've been selling my soul.
There you and more of that too.
You'll find out what that's all about.